Hi, welcome to the Relax and Breathe Summit, and my guest today is Robin Rothenberg. Hello, Robin. It's so
Hello.
exciting to have you and your expertise to share with us on the summit. So, I would really love it if you could just start off with a general introduction for anyone that's viewing that hasn't been exposed to your work, and just talk a little bit about yourself and your work and your background.
So I started, I like to say that I started in yoga through the door of yoga therapy because I was a wreck. And I always needed special adaptations, and I had back issues and neck issues. Well, neck issues actually came from bad yoga, but that's another story. Important story, but and part of my journey as well. But back issues, really weak, chronic fatigue, a lot of autoimmune stuff, what would be called fibromyalgia now, but I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know it then because nobody was diagnosing it then. So chronic pain, exhaustion. And when I started doing yoga, I started feeling better, and I sought out teachers who seemed to have an understanding of how to work with people like me, because I wasn't your
Mm-hmm.
average, flexible, strong, let's do whatever pose, the teacher says, just pop up into it. Everything was a real struggle. I had a very tight, weak body. And so the good news is I got stronger and healthier through yoga. I also pushed and ended up with a lot of yoga related injuries. So the combination, and then again, I looked for teachers who seemed to have an understanding of how to work with those. And at some point, the back and forth between fixing one issue but then ending up with another issue
I understand.
led me to think, really love yoga. It's transforming my life in so many ways. I'm committed, I'm dedicated. This is definitely a path for me. And I have to find a way of practicing that doesn't wreck me, because where's the ahimsa in all of this?
Right,
And so that led me to Gary Krafsow and Vini Yoga, which was a big shift from Iyengar. And I mean, mentally, it was a big shift in
right.
terms of how to work with the breath. It was a big shift, and definitely it was a shift in terms of asana. And while my head was still resisting, my body was going, "Oh, thank God, lady. This is really the way we need to move at this pace and in this way, and the adaptations and repetitions so that you warm your body up, and
Right.
breathing with it so that you're not doing your pitta thing. It keeps your pitta under control and you're not pushing. And this is really good for you." So I bowed and listened to my body and have been committed to that process ever since. And so through all of this, I've been teaching for almost 30 years. And
Wow.
and I was always drawn to teaching people, or people were drawn to me who were like me. They needed
Hmm.
adaptations, and I seemed to, because of my own personal experience and the wonderful teachers that I had been exposed to in the Iyengar tradition, that had so many awesome variations on the classical poses to accommodate me. I had a wealth of information on that. And then, of course, Gary's adaptations and the Vini Yoga approach. On top of that, the combination, I had always had students who were more, let's say, in the therapeutic, you know, mode. And so,
Right.
although I was at a certain point, I was able to do very strong asana. I still like to practice strong asana,
Hmm.
and I did do advanced asana classes. It very, that the thrill of that came and went pretty quickly because I was much more interested in the piece of just addressing the population that seemed to be underaddressed, which
Hmm.
were the people that couldn't do the strong power yoga. There was lots of that around, and I seemed to have a real niche for working with and being able to assess and create practices for people who couldn't do the classic poses, or work in that way. And so that led me naturally into the world of yoga therapy, where I'm very happy and at home.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful work. I mean, myself, I came to yoga with a scoliosis in my family, and no one really can even tell I have scoliosis anymore, except that when I do my postures, one side of the body looks different than the other side of the body. And I have done a little bit of the Vini yoga. I was exposed to a couple workshops that we had here in Boulder.
Uh-huh.
And it's wonderful work. It's really great. So I was thinking that maybe we could talk just a little bit about like a simple exercise that would be useful for people who are on the computer all day long and they need to take like a 5 minute break and relieve some of that pressure from their low back. And I noticed when I was looking at your website that you had a series that people can do in the chair where they're working with their pelvis. So I thought that that would be something that would be useful for people that are listening in.
Yeah, so there's a lot about the whole computer thing. I have a
Yes.
practice, and I live in the Seattle area.
Yes.
And so, a lot of my clientele are Microsofties who are
Right.
just in horrible back pain, neck pain, have chronic headaches,
Right.
primarily because that's their life. They sit on the computer. And so we talk ergonomics, we talk how to sit. One of the, and that's a key issue. And even sometimes they might have had even a specialist come in and set them up so that their computer's at the right height,
Right.
arms are at the right height, but they're still splaying their legs, and so they're kind of in sort of a turned out position, which deactivates their
Right.
core muscles,
Right.
and then they sag and sink in their lower back and puts them in that slump position, and they rest into the back of the chair, and as opposed to using their back muscles and their core muscles to lift up. So a simple thing that I often give them, and what I would recommend if any of your audience is find themselves going, oh, I think I do that,
Yes.
is to take a yoga block and put it between your thighs
Oh,
and squeeze the yoga block. And in those videos that you talk about where I'm doing chair work, you'll see that I'm often
Right.
having people have a block between their legs, and that's to help them to plant their feet on the floor. The other thing is people pull their toes back underneath
Right.
the chair, which again pivots their pelvis. So then they go into that hyperlordotic
Right.
position. And again, you're thinking hours. You're not thinking about your back because you're on the screen and you're doing whatever you're
Yeah.
doing. And it's not until you get up and try and move that you go, oy vey, that is
Right.
So, so planting the feet on the floor, having the block between the thighs. If you're going to be there for a long period of time and you can't actively engage the thighs because it just takes too much effort, you can even put a belt around your thighs to keep them parallel. The idea is the legs acting as pillars of support for the pelvis.
Right.
And a little reminder to keep pulling in and keeping a little bit of that deeper abdominal support to keep the low back in neutral so it's not collapsing, in that sort of that backwards position or pivoting forward into a hyperlordosis. So in some ways it's really, posturally, that's the first and foremost thing is getting that. And then doing simple stretches like, pivoting back in the chair and just stretching over, doing
Right.
a right angle kind of seated downward dog over the desk
Right.
is a nice thing to do and very simple. And you can put a little reminder on your computer screen saying stretch break.
Or set a timer, I think is helpful sometimes.
Yeah, timer, anything that helps. It depends if you're more visually attuned or more auditorially attuned. And then the other thing is I'm a big believer in undulation.
Oh, great.
Undulation is really, really key. This did not come from any of my yoga teachers. It came from my anatomy gurus who taught me how the body actually functions and the importance of keeping our fascia, our connective tissue, hydrated.
Right.
And fascia is not laid down in lines like muscle is. So most of our asana is designed in a very linear fashion. And so it's great for muscle, but it doesn't get into the fascia. If we want to get into fascia and hydrate the fascia, which is hydrated, plumped up through movement, then we have to move in non-linear ways. So undulation, it might look weird, but the weirder it looks and actually weirder it feels, the more you're getting into the rusty spots, the places where you don't usually move, and that helps to keep everything more vital and happy and healthy. So doing what I call hula hula, which is just, like circles and figure eights in your pelvic girdle. It really helps to loosen up the muscles around the lumbar and the sacrum and the pelvis. And then get up off your butt. For God's sakes, don't just sit. We weren't made to sit.
Right.
It's to remember that back in the day, when we were created, before all of our modern conveniences, we walked for a living. We walked and we moved. And when we sat to eat for a very short period of time, and there usually wasn't a cushy chair to sit in, so we weren't inclined to hang out on a rock or hard ground for long periods of time because it hurt. And get up and you move again. So our glute muscles were strong. They were what I say they were plumped up as opposed to the flat tires that most of ours are, because we sit on them all day long. And weak glutes that are sat upon actually contribute largely to back pain. So get up and move. Get up and stand. Take a walk down the hall. Don't just sit there. Really get your body moving. So how's that?
That is fabulous. That's exactly what I like to tell people. And that, especially I like the piece that you added about the fascia, because I have early training about that with Aston patterning and Rolfing years ago. Yes. And I think that to introduce that piece to yoga is really important.
It's one of my primary pieces when I teach about the Anamaya Kosha, the physical body, is to teach people about fascia. And I'm actually collaborating with Tom Myers of Anatomy Trains, he's all about the fascia. He's written the book on fascia for body workers like Rolfers and Heller workers who do work at the level of the connective tissue. And he does a lot of instructional work with Yoga U online, webinars for yoga teachers, and they're putting together an extensive 20-hour course on this specifically for yoga teachers, and I will be creating the practices that go along with Tom's didactic information. I do recommend anybody who is a yoga teacher who's listening, this is really important information. Such a piece.
Yeah, I think it's really important. And people forget that what percentage of the body is water as well when you were talking about hydrating and moving, and that, doing yoga in a rigid way is a lot of the way that people get injured.
Yes, exactly.
Because I do have people that say, well, I can't do yoga, I hurt myself there. And I think it's just because they're pushing themselves too hard, they're getting dehydrated in a hot class, and they're not being exposed to the aspects of yoga that you're talking about now. Okay, and then one other thing I thought of when you were talking about back and sitting in the chair at the computer that I've observed, mostly with my sons when they're playing video games, is the way that they tense their body. Because the action, this is different than working, but a lot of the same people are playing a lot of video games. And then they're tensing their whole body and holding their breath because of, the excitement of the game. So what do you say to people like that?
How many hours do you want to talk about?
Just a few quick tips, maybe like 5 minutes.
Okay. So the reason why I say that is because this is really a complex issue, because it's not just about the physical body.
It's the nervous system, right?
Exactly. You just went into the nervous system
and
the mind and the emotions.
Right.
They're all linked, and they feed in a loop around each other. So you've got your body. Let's just take it apart, and then we'll put it back together. Is that okay?
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay. So you've got your body in a position pretty much like this.
Right.
Because most people are looking down. Are you talking about like looking at their device down here?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So, there's now a syndrome that's officially called text neck.
Wow, great.
And it's not a joke at all. I'm seeing people who literally they have severely injured their necks to the same degree And these are young people, by the way.
Right,
I see
right.
a lot of young people, like teenagers and people in their 20s, who have the necks of somebody who suffered severe whiplash in a car accident.
Right. It's terrible.
So they have compressed their cervical vertebra by reversing the curve, by hanging the weight, 10, 12 pounds of their head
Yeah, sometimes even 15.
on their neck muscles with no postural support,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the front of the neck muscle, the front of the neck is compressed, and all of the nerves and the arteries, everything is compressed all the way down, which means they're starting to have shooting pains down in their arms, numbness, tingling, chronic headaches. It displaces their jaw. There's so many structural anomalies from this, and so it's a very serious issue. And this can be something, I mean, this is a setup for the rest of their life to have problems. It's not just today my neck is kind of crimped, like I slept funny.
Right.
This is a problem that is structurally so unsound and problematic that it can set them up for decades of headaches and chronic pain. It be actually to the level of a disability. So it's something we need to take seriously on the structural level. Then you add to it what you were talking about. They're playing these games where people, I'm sorry, you'll hear my bias in it.
That's okay.
Are shooting people, killing people,
Right.
being shot at and attacked. Now, our nervous system is wired
Right.
so that if it perceives that there is an attack or something threatening to our life, to push into fight or flight.
Right.
That means we're in trouble, and what we're supposed to do is get the heck out of there. So we're supposed to put all our energy into getting the heck away from the problem, or turning around and fighting and combating it, so that we can then get ourselves to safety, because we're supposed to live in this level of,
Right.
Hakuna Matata, much more no worries, be happy, chilled out, there's no predator after us. So what does that do in terms of programming our nervous system when we spend hours in a state where we are jazzed up in fight or flight, but we're not moving? We're just sitting there feeding it over and over and over and over and over again. What does that do to the mind? Yoga
Exactly.
Yoga is about relieving that stress and that tension. The yogis didn't talk about it in terms of fight or flight. They talked about in terms of dukkha, suffering,
Mm-hmm.
and that we needed to get the vrittis, the movement, the fluctuations, the turnings of the mind out of the negative and more towards the calm and the positive.
Right.
And that that's a difficult transition for us as human beings.
Yes. I agree.
And so the teachings and the practices of yoga are all about getting us from the Dukkhaville
Right.
into what we call Sukkhaville, which is that happy state. So there's really multiple issues with this lifestyle.
Right.
Physically, psycho-emotionally, that we have to start to address. To me, it's no less problematic, addictive, and life-threatening as shooting heroin. Say it like that. I mean, it's really like taking drugs. There's nothing that's healthy, beneficial for us. And then, as you and I discussed a little bit on, together when we were discussing this topic, that it also takes us away from what you and I are even doing right here and now.
Connecting.
You're in Colorado, I'm in,
Right.
Baltimore City, Washington, but we're connecting.
Right.
And I'm looking at you, and you're looking at me, and
Right.
there's a resonance that's happening
Right.
as I talk, and you're going like this,
Right. I'm listening.
listening, but you're also, your body, your emotional system is connecting to my emotional system, and we're feeding off of each other. And this is actually what supports the opposite of fight or flight. This social engagement that we're involved in right now is very calming and soothing to the nervous system. It's what babies and mothers do. It's what friends do. It's what lovers do. this is what supports the opposite of the stress hormones that get
Right.
activated when we're like this. It supports the bonding hormones and the de-stress hormones that take our body out of that stressed out state. And when we're looking at a screen, we're not getting that. We're not feeding that. It's like we're missing vitamin love, vitamin connection, vitamin C in the sense of connection. And so we're not only doing harm, but we're not doing the healthy piece that really supports our well-being as human beings. We need this. We need it. We need it like we need, protein and vitamins and dark leafy greens and fresh air and water. We need this.
No, I totally agree with you. And I was just noticing yesterday when I was walking around, everybody with their head in their phone.
Yes.
To the point that it's just like, not only are they doing that when they're sitting down, walking around, driving the car, it's just like an epidemic. And so I'm so glad that we're talking about it.
Yeah, it's really, even if one person out there hears this and starts to rethink how they're spending their time, and make some of these shifts, it's like that. What is that? The millionth monkey. If one at a time,
Right.
at a time, and they tell their friend, and that friend tells their friend, and we start to transform this, because we're all amidst a non-controlled experiment right now.
We are. We're lab rats.
Oh, there's no precedent for this in our history. And so we'll actually find out the results. I mean, we're starting to see them. I'm certainly starting to see them. Studies are coming out. But really and truly, we're going to see the ultimate consequences of this lifestyle in the next 10 years. And my prediction, not that I have a crystal ball, but my prediction is it's not going to be pretty. We're going to see so many health issues, from increase in anxiety, insomnia, suicide, murder. I mean, we're already seeing this.
Yes.
But I really think that it's going to just increase, and a lot of it is because people are relating in violent ways to this machine instead of in supportive, loving, connected ways with other human beings. And they're locking all of that stress in, as opposed to getting out, moving, taking a walk with a friend, going to the gym, whatever. But doing yoga, but doing something that's healthful and supportive and healing for their body, their mind, their spirit.
Right. And I totally agree with you. I'm so glad that we're discussing this. And do you have any particular products or services that address these kinds of concerns that people can see on your website, or?
Yes, actually, I have a lot.
Oh, that would be great.
So I have.
We can end in a positive note that way.
There's help. So in 2000, I was asked to be a part of a study that was funded by the National Institutes of Health.
Great.
On yoga therapy to alleviate lower back pain. And my teacher at the time, Gary Kraftsaw, and I created this protocol for the lower back. And this was for people that did not have any prior yoga experience. Mm-hmm. They had chronic back pain. So it's really, for the beginner mind. We didn't use Sanskrit words. We kept it very simple, and it proved to be extremely effective. Great. So that study was published in the Annals of Internal Medicine, which was actually a landmark publication, because it was the first large-scale randomized controlled trial, which is sort of like the gold standard for research, that was on yoga, that was published in a major medical journal. The Annals is a very well-respected, credible, peer-reviewed journal. And then a few years later, they took our same protocol and did another study, a larger scale study, and also got good results, and that was published in the Archives of Internal Medicine in 2011. So essentially what I did after the study was published and the results came out was that I took that study that we did, which was done as a 12-week program, and I took the primary practices that we did for that. So it is the study, it is the practices, because we did 2 weeks of each of the practices for the study, so it got expanded out to 12 weeks. I took it and I put it into 5 practices.
Great.
And it's a product called the Essential Low Back Program, and it has an MP3 with me talking, guiding through all the practices. They're done as audio, and I also created a book that has a little bit of a basic anatomy 101, which I wrote I always say with the farmer in Kansas in mind, who had never done yoga but wanted to understand why his back hurts. Although the farmer is probably less likely to have back pain because he's up and moving and doing things all the time than the Microsofty or the
Exactly.
computer.
Yes.
So I have to kind of change my frame of reference there.
That's okay.
So a little bit of anatomy about what can happen to the lower back and why you as an individual may be experiencing back pain, because there's many different things that can go wrong in the back, different kinds of back pain, not one kind.
Right.
And then the 5 practices, which are scripted out with photos that go along with it. So I've heard, I've sold many thousands of copies of it, and to people that I've never met. But I have heard from people who've said that they've never done yoga before. They find it to be very helpful and very effective at addressing their back pain. So there's that product.
Great.
I also have some relaxation CDs. They're based on the technique of Yoga Nidra, which is a deep guided relaxation that is relaxing for the body, the breath, the mind, the heart, the spirit, and those are good for insomnia and anxiety. Soothing the spirit in particular was cultivated. I created that for people with anxiety. And then on my website, I also have free videos. I have a whole free video.
Yeah, I saw that. It's great. You do. You have a great collection.
Yeah, and I've been really fortunate in that I've been hired by different groups to create videos for specific populations. And so those were professionally produced.
Yeah, they're great.
Quality is very high, and then I've been given the link. I was paid to do the videos, and then I have.
Oh, nice.
So what's lovely is that that they're there for anybody and everybody to use, and they're very well done. The audio is really good. The video is good on them. So those anybody is welcome to look at. A few of them are specific to the lower back. Okay, and then also there's a series that's called Yoga for MS that was done because I specialize in working with people with MS and Parkinson's and neurological conditions. And so those were done specifically by the hospital that hired me to develop their Yoga for MS program. However, what I want to say is those practices are good for people that don't have MS as well.
Great.
And they're short. They're like, between 8 and 15 minutes long. There's also a lower back practice in that's slightly different than the other 2 lower back practices. Okay,
so they don't have to keep doing the same one over and over. They can look at different videos.
There's 6 of them.
Right.
One of them specifically is about breath and teaching about the breath. One specifically about working the core and how to engage the core. And that's, like I said, very useful.
Right.
The idea of the block, the idea of connecting the core to our base, to our feet, to our legs, creating that support. There's also an animation video on that free video website of how to engage the inner core, what it is and how to engage it. I don't know if you've seen that, but
I did, and I thought it was great. I really liked it. I think it's a great, simple explanation of a lot of people in yoga are confused about what their core is. They're like...
And people out of yoga are also confused about what the core is. What the core really is, it's not the six-pack muscle at all.
No, it's a great explanation.
It's the core muscle of all the abdominal muscles. So that was for one of the groups that I created helped them create a chronic pain workbook, online workbook, and their animator worked with me to create that. So that's a pretty nifty thing. But there's also a 15-minute neck and shoulder
video
that's on that. Again,
what we're talking about.
MS, but It's great.
For the
And it's all
texting.
from a chair. So you talk about ideas. What do you do while you're sitting in a chair?
Right.
There's all kinds of stretches and strengthening pieces. So that's in there as well. There's balance and there's
Great.
relaxation. So there's a combination of nice little vignettes in that Yoga for MS course that you can go through and pick out the pieces that are most appropriate for you on any given day.
That's so great. And they're all free. You're all offering them.
All
It's
free.
fabulous. It's very generous of you. And you want to tell us a little bit also about the free gift offer that you have for people that are watching now?
Well, is that
It's,
link?
oh, I see. Okay. So we've already been
Link.
talking about it. Great.
Yeah, so it's the link to specifically to the yoga for lower back
Oh, great. Okay.
videos.
Great.
So if people are, we spoke specifically about that
Right.
piece.
Great.
So then they can do an easy link right to that, but you can also from there go and look at all
Okay.
of the videos that are there, and they're there for your use and hopefully to support your health and well-being.
Yeah, and they're great videos. I looked at quite a few of them. The core one is so clear. It's the best one I've ever seen to simply explain the core and the importance of strengthening the core and how easy it is to strengthen the core.
Easy and difficult. I mean, how once you know how to engage those muscles, you can do it anywhere. Like right now, I'm strengthening my core right now.
Right. Right.
And because the thing that's challenging for people in our culture to understand is that strength doesn't always come through movement. We think of bicep curls. This
Right.
is strengthen a muscle.
Mm-hmm.
But there are muscles like our stabilizing muscles, which the core muscles are about holding us upright. So we can sit like this. So we can,
Right.
in the old days, walk for miles and miles and miles without being fatigued, that are really strengthened in good postural position and holding it for a long period of time. There are endurance